Hi, this is Sophie Klein of Little Wise with John Broughton on Retrospectives. You're listening to KC Radio 97.7 FM.
I don't know what it's like to be alone.
Just to start with, before this lockdown we're currently in, you not too long ago did a run of shows up in northeast Victoria after virtually a year of no gigs. How did it feel getting back up there again? Was it just like getting back on a push bike?
It was amazing, actually. I was feeling a bit nervous to be out playing and gigging again, but and they were all quite sort of long gigs, like three setters, and I did 4 of them over two weekends. And I just had such a good time. It was like just getting back on the horse again. And for whatever reason, I was feeling a bit, I don't know, just I relaxed into it and really enjoyed singing and playing and meeting some lovely people.
You're someone that is known to travel far and wide for gigs, taking your music to towns that may not see a lot of live music, regional areas, smaller towns. How do you find audiences in those types of places?
I really enjoy, I think now reflecting on it, maybe some of it is a bit self-serving because I just enjoy travelling to these far off places and small towns. But I do generally find, you just get to meet a lot of people and hear stories and they're a bit more appreciative because they don't get as much music coming through. So, I really enjoy going to sort of spots off the beaten track.
You met a lot of people doing house concerts as well, and I noticed on your webpage you have a dedicated page to your house concerts. How do you find the house concert experience overall?
I just love the house concert setting, especially I think for solo gigs. It's just really well suited to that intimate environment, that kind of up close and personal, and the spirit of just sharing music in a room with people and a bit more of an exchange with the audience. And generally, the people who host house concerts are super passionate about music, and so are their friends. So it's really a no-brainer for me. I love doing them. In fact, I was supposed to have my first sort of house concert back that somebody had booked through my website, which has a house concert application page. Mm-hmm. However, it was cancelled due to this lockdown, which has put me... Anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah, but, it is.
I sort of took a while to be confident in booking things again, and then just as I was raring to go, it got put on hold. But, that's just part of this new reality, I guess.
Well, hopefully this one won't take too long and we'll be back to normal again before too long. Hey, do you have any specific childhood memories of music reaching out to you in a way that led you to want to pursue it yourself?
It's a good question. My mum played piano and sang a lot in the home. And I think she came to my kindergarten a few times and played piano. I remember we had a few specific car tapes, and one of them was a Paul Kelly album. Now I'm forgetting the name of the album, but it had the song Special Treatment on it, and I remember asking my parents what that song was all about when I was probably quite young and learning about the stolen generation. So I think I was sort of, from quite a young age, quite drawn to the idea of telling stories through song. There was another Paul Kelly song, Other People's Houses, that I remember from when I was quite young, about a little boy who's taken around with his mum, who's a cleaner, and meeting kids in other people's houses, and a friendship with a girl that he developed. And for whatever reason, that really stuck with me. And I did learn piano as a kid, but I didn't really, like, it was just something I did. It wasn't something I was that interested in. But when I was, I think, 11 or 12, my older sister showed me a few chords on her guitar, and I took to that really quickly, and like it was quite easy, strangely easy for me to just start playing and strumming chords and learning, you know, my favorite 4-chord songs. And I think from there I was really hooked, and I remember I must have been 11 or 12, and I must have taken a guitar from the music room at lunchtime and was playing. And I remember my piano teacher walking past, and I felt like I was like cheating on her with someone else. And I think from then on, I think I dropped my piano lessons, which is a shame because now I wish I could play piano a bit better than I do. But yeah, just something about the guitar as an accompaniment for all the songs that I loved. And then, of course, beginning to write my own songs when I was a little older. I really connected with that particular instrument, and I've been obsessed ever since.
Mm-hmm. So venturing into songwriting yourself, who were some of the songwriting heroes that you were looking up to?
Well, I guess in those like formative years, I came to artists like, well, I guess Dylan is a very obvious one, and I came to him probably through artists like the Waifs, who were, and like Ani DeFranco, who were kind of like the next generation, and then seeing what kind of artists influenced them. Mm-hmm. And then, I guess I listened to like a lot of, you know, like the Beatles and all that kind of obvious songwriter stuff. And it's funny, whenever I'm asked this, I struggle to think of female songwriters who really influenced me at those earlier times. But since then, I've began listening to a lot of different artists like Emmylou Harris and Gillian Welsh. And I'm just looking on my wall of my studio here. I've decided to rotate vinyl album covers to put up on the shelf to continue inspiring me. And I've got The Pretenders, Get Close, and Carole King's Tapestry up at the moment. So I guess my fodder for is just that very classic singer-songwriter. Yeah. Probably 60s onwards. But I do, you know, now I listen a bit more broadly, and I was lucky to go to America in 2017, and I went to Americana Fest in Nashville. And I guess through that I was introduced to a lot of artists. Like I currently listen to people like Lily Hyatt, who's the daughter of
John.
The songwriter John Hyatt. Yeah. And I guess I'm really enjoying artists that kind of push the boundaries of genre. Another guy I'm loving at the moment is Aaron Lee Tasjan, who his latest album has a lot of songs that sound something like a mixture between like Tom Petty and like modern dance music. It's like it's interesting stuff sonically. And two other artists I'm listening to at the moment are Hiss Golden Messenger and Nathaniel Rateliff. I'm really loving their stuff of like that kind of deep rooted, like soulful, acoustic-y rock, I guess, and many sort of layers of lushness in their music, and also a very vintage sound. So, yeah, that's the long way of telling you what I'm into.
So in terms of performing, were you a confident stage performer right from the beginning?
interesting question. I think, like in high school and stuff, I was always a lot more of a guitarist than a singer. And I think I had to find my confidence as a singer, and I still am in many ways. I think I've got that classic thing of like the interplay between extremely shy and extremely confident that a lot of performers have. And I don't know, I feel like particularly after not performing for a year or so, I was feeling very shy. But yeah, it's interesting. I get a lot of nerves and a bit of anxiety, to be honest, before performing. But sometimes, you know, often when I'm up there, it goes away and I'm able to just be absorbed in the performance. Yeah, I should, you know, sometimes nerves have got the better of me and I get a bit shaky. And, but yeah, I think I've learnt over the years how to channel it a little bit, and just to try and see it as like I'm just really excited for this moment, and rather than it being a bad kind of nerves, it being like a excited, and try to channel that energy into the performance. But yeah, I'm definitely not like the most sort of natural performer and confident performer, but I guess for me it's just more about sharing my songs rather than it being this, you know, I'm this person up on stage who you know, a rock goddess or something. But yeah, it's just this constantly evolving thing, I guess.
And evolving is that in Little Wise is quite evolving in terms of personnel. It could be just you solo or a duo or a trio. Do you feel more comfortable in either particular format?
No, it changes all the time, and I guess for me, like, Little Wise is my songs and my music, and it can take on a lot of different formats, as you say. I've played pretty consistently for the past few years with the same rhythm section of Rosie Burgess on bass and Pam Zaharias on drums. Saying that, sadly we haven't performed together in like a year and a half. I'm hoping to rectify that soon. But yeah, interestingly, I've actually just been in the studio the past couple of months just to record a couple of songs. And yeah, I've just been experimenting with different people in a studio band setting as well. So for me, it's just always about seeing what direction you can push a song to and how you can best serve the song, and sometimes collaborating with different players. It can just fuel something new and exciting and continue that evolution, because I don't know, for me, all my favourite songwriters have music that sounds very different at different times. And work with different bands, and I find that exciting to put a sort of different frame on things.
The personal element to your songwriting was quite evident on your first album, Silver Birch. Does writing songs of such a personal nature help you deal with the issue at hand? Can it be therapeutic, I guess, could be a word for it?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely was therapeutic, and that album, as you said, is quite personal. A lot of the songs were written in the year, couple years after my mum died, and sort of deal with that grief element. Saying that, I found like songs off that album can be quite difficult to perform and almost a bit too personal at times. So I think with my next album, I found a way to express things that were personal, but in a bit more of a generalized nature. And yeah, it's interesting. I think my writing has gone back to being a little bit more personal and telling my own stories again a bit more, but yeah, probably not quite as personal as Silver Birch. Probably not as raw, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think, like, as a songwriter, like, I'm also learning that it has to be authentic and personal, but if you can do it in a way that as many people can relate and find their own meaning in the song, even better.
Is your songwriting antenna always up looking for song ideas, or do you just let them come to you in a more natural way?
You know, I go through sort of phases of being more deeply engaged and, like, you know, highly attuned to everything that's going on and how that could be a song, versus just, you know, I have other things in life pulling me in other directions and being a bit less absorbed. But yeah, everything is fodder for songs, and I've got just on my smartphone, I've got just hundreds and hundreds of notes and just little voice memos, and often when I'm driving, I can write songs if I just turn off the radio. So I'll often just hit record on a long drive, and I'll be singing ideas, and or even, like, if I've started writing a song, I can finish it if I'm driving to work or something.
Yeah.
So I do find that inspiration does kind of hit me, and for me it's always a balance between waiting for that inspired moment versus doing the work and sitting down and saying, okay, today I'm going to try write a song. And I've sort of set myself a little, like, goal, not that I have to share them with anyone, but to try and sit down and write at least one song a week. So far I haven't stuck to that, but I'm hoping that by telling you that, it will help me stick to it a bit more.
So perhaps songwriting is a use it or lose it skill. You need to exercise that songwriting muscle once a week.
Well, yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I find if I haven't written songs for a while, I tend to have to write a few bad songs before I get to the good stuff. So if I just keep writing, it's easier to keep the good stuff coming.
Yeah. Is there a heavy editing process in your writing?
There can be. It really just depends on the song. Some of them turn out, like in the final recorded version, to be almost unrecognizable from the initial song. And some will be pretty much how I wrote them. It just, every song is different, I guess, and the attention that it needs, and how authentic and wonderful it was when it first emerged versus how much it needed a lot of tweaking. And I really, it's hard work, but I really enjoy that process.
What about interpreting and covering other people's songs? You backed up your last album with an EP of live performances, which included a wonderful interpretation of Bruce Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark, and which certainly made me see that song in a whole new light. How do you go about taking on a song like that, which is so familiar to people in its original form, and putting your own spin on it?
Well, I guess being somewhat of an unknown artist in the world, I guess I do covers in a way by necessity, because some gigs that I play, I'll be playing to people who don't know me, and sometimes it takes a song they know for their ears to prick up and actually tune in to the music. And most recently with that, we mentioned that run of gigs in Northeast Victoria, I, for the first time, played about 50% covers, which I'm not a person who plays sort of cover gigs, but I really enjoyed the process of learning songs that I love and putting my own spin on them. And yeah, I forgot exactly the question, but was it about...
about that specific Springsteen cover? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and that Springsteen, like when I was recording the album Want It All, which came out in 2019, I hadn't actually grown up listening to a lot of Springsteen, and I sort of had just discovered him around the time we were recording. Discovered him, but discovered my love for Springsteen's music and his kind of equalizing power over people, like so many different people from different walks of life to relate to what he's singing about. So I guess that was my little nod of the head to that influence on my music, and that album in particular was why I chose that song. And I've really been enjoying experimenting with really kind of moody, electric guitar with lots of tremolo and delay, and how that interplayed with my voice. So yeah, I really enjoyed putting that cover together, and yeah, people seemed to... I'd been playing it live quite a bit before I did the recording on ABC Radio Melbourne, which is the version that ended up on that live EP.
Yeah.
And yeah, people just loved it. People just responded so well, and I always had the whole crowd singing, by the last chorus, and I think it's fun to play something almost really mainstream that so many people know, and because I think also for me it's sort of like an amazing songwriting thing that so many people can know and love and identify with a song and learn what it is about that song and apply that to my songwriting. So yeah, there's lots of layers of why I love it, really.
I was reading another interview with you from not too long ago where you mentioned a full-time transition into music as a goal, and I guess COVID obviously hasn't helped help you reach that goal any closer. How's it been for you over the years, like balancing music with a day job?
Yeah, well, I always have done. Like, I've never had it as my only thing. However, I did sort of quit my permanent, most sort of demanding role in 2019, and since then I've been doing a lot more kind of piecemeal work of, a little casual admin role and a casual youth worker gig, and teaching guitar, which I've been loving. And I'm loving the freedom of all those different little things, that allows me to go off and gig when we could do that. And yeah, I don't know, the balance is really tricky. I feel probably lucky that in a way that I wasn't more successful in my endeavours to make music my full-time thing over COVID, because I saw my friends who had made that transition really, really struggle, and then have to go and find other things again. So yeah, I don't know what the future holds in terms of full-time music versus a lot of different things, but I don't know. I think when you're an artist, it's just always trying to find the right balance, and it's an endless endeavor. And now that I've got a kid, it's even more just finding the right balance between the time with your responsibilities and your family versus the creative nourishment of your soul. But I think for me, it's also allowed me to chill out a bit about the whole, pushing a money-making side of the career, and just try focus on making the best art possible and see what comes from that. And I think if I learned anything during the time away from the stage over the last year or so, it's just been to take the pressure off and know that songwriting and making music is a thing that I do, and I probably will always do that, and that's what matters rather than any other sort of outcome. And I think that's also freed me up really creatively as well.
Just browsing around on the internet this morning, I found you on a website for something called the Rhythm Tree, an organisation called the Rhythm Tree. Are you still involved in that?
I've taken a little pause from that. I've loved working for them. So it's family music classes for 0 to 5-year-olds and their parents or grandparents or whoever takes them along. And that's been a completely new direction for me, and I learned so much also about how I learn music, because it's about, I guess, instilling basic levels of musicality in really young children, so that later on, if they can access primarily just the joy of making music, but if they want to follow that on and become musicians, it's very accessible to them. So yeah, I have been teaching with them, and I just sort of I did an internship and a course to become a qualified teacher through their program, and I taught for 6 weeks in person last year as a new teacher, and then we went online, which is really challenging when you're working with really young children.
Yeah.
But it ended up being mainly doing classes for the grown-ups who then could use those skills with their kids at home during lockdown. And it was sort of one of those situations where it's like not the best, but it's the best we've got. And it really meant a lot to some of the families I was working with. So yeah, I've loved that, and I hope to be able to return to teaching with them soon. I just had a few other jobs and life things to balance.
Now, as many independent musicians have done in recent times, you've gone down the crowdfunding path to get your music out there. It's become a very popular and rewarding way for artists to go about getting their music out there. Do you think it's a course of funding that perhaps you can consistently go to, or do you think there's limitations to how many times you can go to that well?
I think crowdfunding for like singular events like an album, it is like the first time around was definitely a lot easier than the second time around, because people are really excited for your first album, and there's a lot more kind of family and friends and stuff that put in. Second time was a lot more work to kind of get it over the line, which I did amazingly, and I'm very grateful. And I definitely noticed it was a lot more music fans than friends and family second time around. But yeah, it's interesting, like a lot of people are going down the route of Patreon and crowdsourcing regular income, which I think is probably the more sustainable way to go, rather than these huge crowdfunding efforts for a one-off event of releasing an album or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess saying that, like, as I've gone along, I've built a bit more of an audience who will, buy my CDs and vinyl and stuff on Bandcamp. So in a way, I have a bit of a crowdsourcing thing without having to do that platform for my sort of loyal supporters who I know will be there. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's great, but people might underestimate the work involved in maintaining a crowdfunding campaign.
Now, you mentioned, you touched on your Nashville experience a little bit earlier in our chat, but that also included a performance at the famed Bluebird Cafe. Can you tell us about that experience?
That was like out of this world. Like, I think, I don't know, you hear as a songwriter, you hear about the famous Bluebird Cafe in Nashville. And then I walked in to play at the Sounds Australia showcase where all these Australian artists who are in Nashville for Americana Fest were playing. And you see on the walls, there's framed pictures of all the famous people who've played there, and there's Willie Nelson looking down at you, and Emmylou Harris is looking down at you, and all these people that you just worship as songwriters. So I don't know, the night itself was a bit of a blur, but it's just one of those things, like magic things, where you get close enough to touch these I don't know, just these magic moments where you're sort of touching on the magic of what it is in what you do in such a deep and profound way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really kind of that experience was so exciting and inspiring. I mean, the night itself is almost a complete blur because I think my adrenaline was just that high, and being in the place, but I guess the experience stuck with me for a long time, and it makes you feel like you're really in it. You're really in the circle of where you want to be, and it's a great thing. I think as small independent artists, we experience so many setbacks and rejections and things we thought would come off that don't, that you just need a few little wins to sustain you and keep the fire burning. And that was definitely a big inspiring moment for me to keep going. And I guess it continues to be like, as when I remember it, I'm like, oh wow, I played at the Bluebird Cafe. How cool is that? So yeah, it keeps me going for sure.
Absolutely. Your most recent album, What It All, was a shift to a more pop rockier type sound. After 2 full-length albums now, I guess there's no danger of anyone typecasting you into a particular genre. Is that something you were conscious of?
I don't know. It's hard when you don't fit into a genre, especially as an emerging artist, because it's not always clear, like, what festival you should apply for, or, what venue you should play at, or what magazine you should get a write-up in, because you're not clearly in a niche thing. But, I think, as I mentioned earlier, like, none of the artists that I absolutely adore kind of stick to one particular thing only. And I was just, with One It All, I guess because I had recorded such a personal and in a way sad, like it's not all sad, but there's elements of Silver Birch that are quite sad and plaintive. I wanted to kind of shake that loose a bit and shake things up a bit and make music that you could, rock out to a bit more. And that's where I guess that Springsteen thing came in, of like, draw people in and cut loose yourself a bit, but then have your moments where it is hard on the sleeve. But not every moment has to be that hard on the sleeve moment. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I must say I do enjoy playing those songs live because of that just freeing element. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens next. I think in some ways, because of the times, I've gone back to a lot of just strumming my acoustic guitar and being very real with no kind of, I don't know, nothing to hide behind.
Yeah.
But I've also been, I like to experiment sonically when I'm in the studio. So just laid down one song that is a bit more kind of acoustic, raw, hard on the sleeve, and then another song which lyrically is probably like that too, but sonically we've done a bit more with, some interesting synthesizers and stuff on it. So I'm excited to hopefully release those at some point soon.
Fantastic. I know it's hard to, before I let you go, I know it's hard to make plans in the state of things at the moment, but what are your upcoming plans for the rest of this year, provided we're all allowed to do what we want to do?
Well, I haven't told anybody yet, but I'm happy to share now that I have a solo show coming up at the Wesleyan, which will be sort of very limited tickets due to, COVID restrictions. So hopefully that's going ahead. It's either August 7 or August 8. So watch this space. We're just nailing down the exact date.
Okay.
And that will be kind of a very up close and intimate acoustic show, I think, where I will share some of my new material. And then beyond that, possibly looking at some band shows and releasing a couple of new singles that I mentioned. So, watch this space.
Fantastic. I'll be watching. Hey, Sophie, thanks so much. Thanks so much for your time. It's been wonderful to catch up with you, and thank you for all the wonderful music so far. But there is obviously a lot of great music ahead as well. We look forward to hearing that from you.
Thanks so much, and thanks for your very well-considered questions and for chatting today.
Appreciate your time, and go and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks so much. Okay.
Cheers, Sophie.
Take care, John.
Bye.
Bye.